Hey Teal Nation, it's Sam Wiederhaft with you for another edition of the Chant Pod presented by Revolution Mortgage. Well, the weather's heating up now, which has been wonderful. Everybody's getting back outside, and I thought for this week's episode, why don't we go to the beach? We're checking in with CCU Beach Volleyball this week and chatting with head coach Collin Wilson. The Chants are looking good as the Sun Belt Tournament comes up next week, and Collin gave me the team breakdown, some basic rules of beach volleyball, and why they're so fun to watch. So kick those shoes off and grab a beach chair. Here's my conversation with Collin Wilson. Today on the Chant Pod, presented by Revolution Mortgage, we're going to the beach and talking with beach volleyball head coach Collin Wilson. Collin, appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on.
Sam, thanks for having me. It's a long time coming.
This has been a long time coming. We've known each other for a long time, and it's great to finally have you here for an interview. Let's talk about how the season's going so far for your beach volleyball team.
Yeah, it's been a fun one. It's a really unique group because we graduated a stunning 11 athletes last year.
Yeah.
Our roster size is normally in the 16 to 19 range, so 11 is a pretty good percentage. I think 7 of our 10 winningest players in program history left.
Yeah.
And so that definitely adds a unique challenge, but our group's really grown this year, and that's been really fun. So we're on the winning track. We've been getting on a bit of a roll, and so excited to finish out the year.
It's not a rebuild, it's a reload.
It's a reload, and I would agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we have probably one of the best freshmen in the country in Frida Leo at our ones pair, and we've got some great young transfers, so the future looks really bright.
You look at your schedule, you guys played some really, really tough teams in the beginning part of the year and some really tough tournaments. How have you seen your team just improve and progress throughout the season?
Yeah, one of my goals coming into this season, knowing we're going to have a young group, was to challenge them early, because I think it's always hard to maybe ramp yourself up and then play those tough matches late and not really know how it feels to play good teams. And so we went out to Texas, the University of Texas, who's ranked like 8th in the country right now. They were not ranked 8th at the start. They were 15th or something like that. But
still good.
Still were doing really well for themselves,
yeah.
and obviously have shown that they're a good team, which is why the ranking has gone up. Played them. We played perennial tournament team, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, a top 20 program in Tulane, and then we also had SFA. That was a great battle. We followed up with another long travel trip, and I think you're hearing a lot about now with the Big Ten and like having to go east to west and that kind of deal. It is a real factor, and I think when you tack on beach volleyball, which is probably the most energy expenditure that an athlete has in sports, like the equivalent of one beach volleyball match is something like 1/2 plus a few minutes of soccer, which so like we see soccer athletes and they play how many matches in a weekend? They play like 2 matches, like they play Friday, Sunday, or Thursday, Saturday.
Right.
And we're playing 4.
Right.
So we're playing like 3 soccer matches in like 2 days, and then flying across the country. And so I wanted to challenge them in that way, and they really stepped up. We played closer and closer volleyball, and then have now had some good success in those other tough matches.
As the head coach that doesn't have a very extensive staff with beach volleyball, what goes into the scheduling? Like, how do you get with Texas and be like, yeah, I want to play you guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, our schedule's probably, I always joke, like indoor, we have 4 non-conference weekends that we got to book, and everybody complains like it's the hardest thing in the world to book non-conference. And I go, I have 8 non-conference weekends to book.
Yeah.
Right now, the Sun Belt dictates 1 mid-year event in Foley, Alabama, which we came back from 2 weeks ago, and our conference championship.
Okay.
And our season's 9 weeks long, and we play 8 of those 9 weekends. So I book 7 out of 8 weekends for our regular season. And luckily, I've been in the sport a while now. I've lived in California, Oregon, South Carolina, Louisiana. And so I've developed a lot of really good relationships. I actually coached for the Texas head coach when he was in LA. He coached at UCLA and ran a club called LA Beach. And I was one of his assistant coaches at LA Beach. So last summer, him and I were chatting, and he said, hey, what do you think about coming out to UT and playing one of our home tournaments? And I said, I think that would be awesome. Are you guys going to be good? And he said, I think we're going to be pretty darn good. I said, all right, sounds good. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun.
So it's a lot about connections and having those connections and then following up on it.
Sure. There's a big email thread, and I get a lot of grief because I'm the first email every year. Yeah. And so I get a lot of response. Why are we starting scheduling so early? Why are we doing all this? So I take pride in trying to be as far ahead of the planning segment
The sooner the better.
That's my opinion.
I tell you what, I went out to the beach volleyball courts for the first time this past week and watched the Friday and the Saturday matches.
Yeah.
And the vibe out there is unmatched.
So fun.
Super fun. The weather was great.
Yeah.
You got music going. There was a lot of people out there just hanging out. There's a lot of tents.
Yeah.
Describe the kind of vibe out there.
It's really just hanging out at the beach, right? And there happens to be a high-level sport going on in front of you. And so one of the other really fun parts is like our games are kind of set up like tennis, where you're playing multiple at a time, but you're battling. And so I think you were at the UAB match, right? So we played UAB at home. That's a top 20-ish team. We're a top 20-ish team, so it's a tight match. It's a 2-2 duel. So we won the 5, they won the 4. We won the 3, they won the 1s. And then it's all down to the 2s court. And so the crowd can shift over there and the team shift over there. And you play music and then you relax and everybody goes and grabs a water or soda or some more food and gets back in their lawn chair. And then we do it all over again. And it's just an all-day affair. Like you get to just hang out and enjoy a great sport. There's music playing and you can talk. And it's kind of like gives off a feel of baseball tournament day, like when Kansas State was here, and I can't remember who the third team was at that tournament.
Yeah, it was Washington earlier.
Washington, yeah.
St. Joseph's, that first tournament.
Yeah, there's just games all day, and you're just hanging out at the ballpark, enjoying the music, enjoying good sport.
I don't know if I would use the word relaxed to describe what you were feeling for that 5th match.
Yeah, I did not feel UAB. I told Sam, like he asked me, he goes, "Hey, do you usually coach from like far away?" I think the 2s court was on the far side, and I was like, "Ah, man, I don't feel well." And I knew I wasn't going to be helpful to that pair. Like they've been feeling really good. Them and Sarah and Chase had done a great job. And so I was like, all right, at this point, it is out of my hands. Yeah. I'm going to go over here. And if I got to throw up, I'm next to a trash can. I'm ready to rock and roll. But I don't feel that way very often. Like that was truly one of the first times I've felt that knot in my stomach. And so it was cool to see our group battle it out. I think probably because Madeline Sigmund, our defender in that pair, is a transfer from UAB.
Okay.
So it comes down to her against her old school.
Yeah.
That was an interesting feeling to be a part of.
Oh, and they pulled it out.
They did.
So the vibes were great.
Yeah.
Talk to me about just seeing that support, because there was a lot of people out there. And there was a good amount of Coastal fans, and the families were all out there. And just how great it is to see that support for your program.
It's awesome, right? I mean, we've wanted for so long people to see what we see, right? Which is how amazing these young women are at what they do, how much they battle. I mean, we have consistently one of the top GPAs in the athletic department. Like our gals do everything the right way. And I can tell you the number one thing we get walking around campus is, oh, is that a club team? Or, oh, we have a beach volleyball team. Where are your courts? Right? And so there's been a big mission of like, hey, our courts are at 460 Century Circle. Here's where we play. Like, let's get out there. Because once you see it, like you did, Sam, it's super fun, right? Like it's like, oh, why would I not want to come hang out at this thing?
Yeah, and I got some color too.
Yeah, I got a little tan on.
A little bit of a tan. The hair got a little bit more blonde. It was a win-win. You talk about like they were playing on the 2s court, right?
Yeah.
Just tell me what the layout is, because you got a good amount of courts.
Yeah.
There's stuff going on almost every single one of them. So what's the typical layout for a tournament? Yeah,
so everybody plays for the most part in 2 waves. And so it's a best of 5 pairs. So obviously beach volleyball's 2s. Each of those is a pair. You're trying to play best of 5. What our sport has allowed is what's called an exhibition pair, or like in golf, how there's a 6s that doesn't count towards your team score, but they still get to compete. We have that as well. And so the first wave on our home courts are our 4th best pair and our 5th best pair and our 6th best pair competing against the opposing team's same matchup, right? And then when you finish that, you then play your 1s, 2s, and 3s pairs, which are your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd best pair. And the 1st to 3 is the winner. During a regular season, we play it all the way out. So you compete all the way until there's 5. So you can win 5-0 like we did on Saturday, or you can win 3-2 like we did on Friday, right? Yeah. And so it kind of plays out that way.
You talk about the pairs, and just kind of talk me through the science and the decision making of how to decide who's with who. Because I mean, there's sometimes throughout the season, like some people will play without, like you'll mix and match a little bit, right? Yeah. So what's the background? How do you decide those pairs? Yeah,
I wish I could say that there was a true science to it. The way I usually think about things is there's siding out and point scoring. And so siding out is when the 2 players are in receive and they receive the serve. You want to win those points 60 to 70% of the time. And when you're serving, you want to win those points 30 to 40% of the time. And there's so many factors. If I pass, you got to set me. So if you're not a good setter, it makes my job notably harder. So I'm trying to find pairs that can complete that side out piece together. Who's a good passer, or who will most likely to get served with somebody that can put up a good enough set for them to get a kill.
Yeah.
And then we kind of just order that down 1 through 5 to give ourselves hopefully a combination of 6 people at any given time that can win their pair.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to rely on me for any sets. So I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. We'll coach you up. Come on out to the sand sometime.
I'm going to have to.
Yeah.
You mentioned like in that UAB match, and you were kind of off to the side. You said, like, I don't need to tell them anything. They're good to go. When you are talking like in between sets to those pairs, like what's some of the advice you're kind of giving them throughout the match?
Yeah, it definitely varies pair by pair. I think with a young group, it's been so fun this year to figure out like who responds really well to encouragement, a challenge, and then who just needs pure strategy. So like Anna Rita, our blocker in that match with Madeline Sigmund, our twos pair, they're super analytical. They just kind of need to know what the heck they're supposed to be doing. Because Anna's really talented, but she's an indoor middle, so she doesn't play a ton of beach. I think she's got a super high ceiling. And then Siggy, or Madeline Sigmund, is like, she's been playing the game for a while, but sometimes she gets a little tight and one-dimensional, and so they need a quick strategy session. Frida and Emma, our ones pair, right? I've been coaching them a good chunk of the season. I recruited Emma Kunis my first go around here, and so with them, it's a lot of like, okay, calm down. What's been working? Like, remember what worked? Okay, great. We're going to keep doing that piece. And so it's definitely challenging. I think, sometimes there's a play call. Sometimes in tight moments, it's like, hey, we're going to run this defensive scheme, or we're going to run this offensive play so that we can try to score an easy point. Yeah. But it definitely varies amongst all 6, 7, 18 pairs.
I mean, it's like a catcher with his pitching staff. Yeah. It's like going out for a mound visit. Everybody's got a different demeanor and a different strategy. It's about adapting to each one. One of your best players, Rachel Ehlers, 5 wins away from becoming the winningest player in Coastal Beach volleyball history. What has made her so successful? Yeah,
I'm going to hope that she's not listening, because she is. So Rachel's been doing a phenomenal job. She is a student teacher right now. She's an education major. Normally, you don't see those in student athletes. It's hard with class schedules to make sure that you can do both. And she's done a phenomenal job with that. She's had an unbelievable story here at Coastal. Her family struggles her sophomore year to winning all these matches, and now being a student teacher and a student athlete, and maintaining a 3.9 something GPA her entire career. She's like the most impressive person that I've gotten to coach. And that is part of that is probably why she's so successful, is like she knows nothing other than I have to keep moving forward. She has a great basis on her faith. Her dad is a pastor up in Delaware. And I think her ability to connect and separate, like, okay, this is volleyball, this is life, has made her super successful, because it's hard. If you start letting your identity be volleyball, then when you maybe don't experience success, right, it can really hinder you once again on the court. And she's been separating it phenomenally. She's been a great partner. I can't tell you, anybody that plays with her always says they love her, from Madison Allred over the last few years, Carly Ginther at one point. Now, obviously, Ava Novello's been her main partner, but she makes whoever she's with feel good. She takes the ball on too all the time. And once again, she's mentally like just a strong human.
Talking with Coastal Carolina Beach volleyball head coach Collin Wilson on the Chant Pod, presented by Revolution Mortgage. You were at Coastal as an assistant coach for a few years, went to a school in Louisiana as their head coach for beach, then came back as the head coach here for Coastal Beach volleyball. How great of an opportunity was it to come back to Coastal?
Gosh, it was funny, because I talked to Steve a lot. Steve Lozwick, who's obviously our indoor coach now, but was the beach coach, was my head beach coach when I was an assistant. We talked before I left, when I was leaving, and the conversation, I'd gotten a couple head coaching offers for beach volleyball, and the conversation always been like, I don't really want to leave, Steve. And he goes, yeah, we'd like to keep you around. And I think I finally got to like the 3rd or 4th offer, and he was like, dude, my youngest, Jake, is 10 years old at the time. He goes, that means he doesn't graduate college for 12 years. In beach volleyball, there are 2 coaches, a head coach and an assistant coach, which means your ability to move up right now is hindered by me having a job. So unless you're okay being an assistant for 12 years, right, you're going to have to make this jump. Right. And I was like, is there any other way? And he goes, I don't think we're going to find a good solution to where I get to still have a job and you get to move up.
Right.
I was like, all right, fine. So I left for Southeastern, and then of course 7 months later, he slides over to the indoor job.
Perfect time.
And I'm like, dude, you couldn't have done this like 7 months before, and I wouldn't have had to leave. And he goes, I know, bad timing, but coming back was a dream come true. I love Conway, I love South Carolina, and getting to be a beach chicken's been like one of the best parts of my life. My best friends are here. We have a community that supports all of our athletics and coaches that support all of our athletics. You know, I remember when Coach Kevin Pedersen first got here, I created a good relationship with him, and we'd play golf from time to time, and getting to come back and be like, hey, we're playing golf again. Let's do this, man.
Yeah.
Was really special.
Steve he obviously filled a big spot in that indoor season when he won Sun Belt Coach of the Year as an interim head coach, then gets named the head coach and moves over to the indoor side full time. Just tell me about what your relationship's been with Steve, because obviously you've been his assistant and he's coached beach before, and you're now his assistant over on the indoor side of things.
Yeah.
So just what has he kind of taught you through this whole process?
I mean, there are not enough good things to say about Steve Loswick. Like, he is probably the best person that I've ever gotten to work for. And I don't say that like I didn't love some of my other former bosses, right? They were amazing too. But Steve's demeanor, he is consistent for these student athletes, right? He's going to be the same. People describe him as chill. And he is, right? He is relaxed, but he's passionate about making great humans. And so getting to see him do that and getting to work with him has been awesome. As a peer, from a head coach to head coach standpoint, I get to continue to have those conversations that maybe we would have when I was an assistant, but to a different level of like, hey, this is still my program. And also to be his assistant, I feel like I get to keep reminding myself, what am I doing this for? How's a better way to do it? What can we do to make our programs better? And so there's not enough good things. I could go on about Steve Loswick for hours and hours and hours, but
what was so interesting was the fact that he was the beach coach, goes over to indoor, has a lot of success there, gets named the head coach, and just was able to make that change so seamless. Yeah. And now you're obviously doing both, the head beach volleyball coach and assistant on his staff on the indoor side. What are some of those similarities and differences when you're training for both beach and indoor?
Yeah, I think we talk about a lot. The games complement each other. The athleticism that a beach volleyball athlete has to have is unmatched. If you've ever walked on the beach, right, you know that's not an easy activity.
Right.
Now run, jump, dive, and do it all by yourself is a whole other can of worms. And like we just said, you're essentially playing 3 to 4 soccer games a weekend. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of physical activity. So the athleticism piece has benefited from the sand. I would say that indoor athletes have to be super creative. You're playing against 6 people on a court that's 3 feet by 3 feet bigger than the beach court. It's a lot harder to score. So those pieces complement each other from an athlete standpoint. From a coaching standpoint, indoor makes me feel way more useful because you can actually talk during the rally, in between points. You can talk the whole time as a coach. In beach volleyball, I can only talk every 7 points. Mm-hmm. So I wait till 4-3, and then I got like 10 seconds to try to communicate some information, and then I can wait till the end of sets. Those are some of the big pieces. The other ones are like, for a lineup to work in indoor, there's a little bit more plug and play, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, we're not experiencing success inside out. Let me get another passer in there, right? Whereas on the beach, I don't get to sub anybody. Yeah. When you're in, you're in. And if you can't finish the match, like if my twos player gets hurt, we lose that pair. Mm-hmm. There's no, hey, let me grab somebody from my bench. And so I think those are some of the main differences. The similarities are obviously it's pass, set, attack, score more points than the other team, be aggressive in serving. And you're still talking to young women and student athletes in a way that helps them be good thinkers as well as good teammates. Yeah.
You've told me this before. You got to run it through me for me again and our fans here on the Chant Pod. How did you get into volleyball coaching in general?
Yeah. So I went to school at the University of South Carolina, which I'm sure is a popular phrase here on the Chant Pod because we've got a few fellow former Gamecocks roaming around. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, I was preparing to be a sports agent for baseball players. And I asked the baseball team if they would let me work there, and they said no. And I said, I'll do it for free. And they still said no. And so I happened to have some friends who were baseball players and beach players, and the beach girls were like, our coaches always need help. Mm-hmm. And so I met Moritz and RJ Abella, and they said, you want to work for free? Sure, you can come on down. And I really fell in love with the sport. And then when I lived out in Southern California and the baseball thing wasn't really going to be the rest of my life. A couple of friends were like, you could probably coach some lessons to make money while you figure out what you're doing with the rest of your life. And here we are, I don't know, 8 years later, still trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's all been so recent. I mean, you talk about like this has been like only an 8-year process, and you're a young guy. You're like a mid-20s guy. Like, how nice is it that you can still almost kind of like relate to the players in that kind of way?
Yeah, I wish I could. I've always been joked about as an old hat, and Ansley Renard, one of our indoor outside, she calls me old like 3 times a day just because the music I listen to and all stuff like that. But I think it helps that I can understand a little bit of what it feels like to go to college. I'm not naive. I also think it helps. There's a lot of talk of NIL. There's a lot of talk of transfer portal. To me, I'm still on that space where I'm like, I have to keep learning and adapting. I haven't grown into a rhythm where I'm like, this is how I coach my program. And as much as I can keep trying to learn, I feel like those changes are going to feel less dramatic. Because I remember when the transfer portal first came in and my head coach was talking to me about this thing, I was like, oh, that'll never take off. That'll be a weird thing. Yeah. Well, turns out it has. For beach volleyball, obviously, I was like, football, I'm sure that'll be a regularly scheduled activity. But
Right.
So I definitely think being young has helped in that regard of trying to learn. I think it's also been great that people are a little bit more willing probably to share information and insight with me. So I get to call a lot of my peers friends and mentors, which has been great. I love learning from Steve Grutowski down at FAU or Stein Metzger and Angie Akers over at Texas, Todd Rogers over at Cal Poly. Like, how often, I just named 3 Olympians, and those are people that regularly we sit on a phone call and we talk about what we're doing with our programs and we bounce ideas off of each other. And so I feel that that's a really special space to be in. Whereas if I was their rival, from my playing days, it might be harder to be their peer and their mentee off the court.
Speaking of the Olympics, I remember being a kid and watching Misty May Traynor and Carrie Walsh, and just being like, just so amused at how the whole sport worked. It was really fun to watch. Yeah. How much have you seen in your time in beach volleyball? How much have you seen the sport grow, not only at Coastal, but just in the entire country?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. I mean, my favorite fact is my first match I ever coached collegiately when I was at Cal State Northridge was actually against Misty May Traynor and her Long Beach City College team. And so that was really fun, and getting to know Carrie and Casey Jennings over the years has been really great. But we started out as like a sport that was, one, it was a party, which, don't get me wrong, we still enjoy ourselves, but it's become less of a totally drinking event and more of a focus on the sport, which has been really special. I also have seen, early days of college beach volleyball. Our assistant coach, Sarah Blomgren, actually won the first ever point for the University of South Carolina. She's the first beach volleyball point that's ever been scored for them. And in those days, she didn't hand set, which is like the activity of like taking that second contact up above. There's just some tighter rules with it. Like, you can't double it, you can't lift it. And so there was none of that. I think the ability to swing hard was kind of limited, and you saw very few high-level indoor athletes choosing beach. And now crossing over and doing both is a little bit more common, as well as getting athletes that are legit indoors to switch full-time to the beach and go play on the sand. And I think that's been really special. Our Olympics obviously got a big boost this last quad with Paris. We didn't have Americans finish on the podium, which stunk, but you got that venue of like the Eiffel Tower being right there and playing the courts, and I think that's huge for our sport to continue to grow in that regard.
What have been your favorite moments so far as a beach volleyball coach?
Man, I mean, it's hard. I think one of the coolest things is getting to celebrate with some of our alumni. So this weekend we had a fair amount of our alumni in town. Just they all chose a random weekend and came by for our matches, and that was really fun. There's some huge wins, I mean, beating UAB is great. Obviously, last year getting our senior squad to accomplish beating South Carolina, right? It's always good to beat the in-state teams, right? You want to do that, and so that part's been really fun. But connecting and the relationships, like watching Martine Kragholm go through her career, change her major, get a master's, graduate. Kaylin Esky, who obviously from the Pelicans, was the first beach volleyball player in Coastal Carolina history. And I remember when she thought her career was over, and then getting another year, and now graduating and getting to play with her sister and getting a job and doing all those things. Like, man, we have some moments, some dinner time, some taco restaurants in Jacksonville that we had to sit outside of for 2 hours because Steve was like, "This is the best tacos in town," and we're all like, "We've been hungry for 3.5 hours, dude." Like, I don't care if
Was it worth the wait?
They were phenomenal tacos, but I'm pretty sure you could have handed me a leather shoe at that point. I'd have thought it was a really good tasting taco. And so I think there are those moments, those bus rides, those experiences, getting ready for a conference match and our 2s and 4s pair being stuck in an elevator was like one of the crazy, like we're getting ready, we're like getting out of the bus and all of a sudden I get a call from, I think it was Carly Ginther, and she goes, "Collin?" "Yeah, Carly, what's up?" "We're stuck in the elevator." And I go up to the front desk and I'm like, "Hey, I think your elevator's broken." And this guy flew over the front desk and ran. I go, "He's either running away or we're going to have you guys out of there in about 2 seconds." One of the two. So like those are great moments. There's
Right.
on the court stuff, but you forget the wins after a couple of years. You forget the losses after a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never forget these people and the time we get to spend with them.
Now, you talk about the season being 9 weeks long.
Yeah.
And we are getting toward the end of that season. Now, what, week 6 or 7 at this point?
Yeah,
7 or 8?
this should be 7, and then next week will be, or this will be week 8. Next week will be week 9, and then we'll be in our tournament.
Yeah, so getting closer to the end of the season, what are some big moments that we can look forward to with your team as the season concludes?
Yeah, I mean, we got a big conference match this weekend down at the College of Charleston, and so not actually our match against College of Charleston, but our match against UNC Wilmington will be a big decider for our seeding going into the Sun Belt tournament. And then next week we'll get a chance at some more top 25 schools with Florida Gulf Coast, South Carolina, Georgia State, and then Jacksonville University. We want to keep building, right? We do have a fun little win streak right now over in-state teams. I think we've beaten a team from the state of South Carolina like 10 straight times right now. So obviously, yeah, we got one against Charleston this weekend, and then we got one against South Carolina next weekend. So it'd be fun to keep that streak going. Mm-hmm. And then we've never been Sun Belt Conference tournament champions. That's a big goal, right? So our beach volleyball national championship is 17 teams. The Sun Belt Conference gets 1 bid usually. Sometimes we can think about maybe getting 2, but this year's going to be a 1 bid deal. So you got to win 3 matches at the end of the year, and you get to go, as we call it, go golfing down to Gulf Shores, Alabama for nationals.
Yeah. Well, Collin, this was great. I know this was a long time in the making.
Yeah, man.
So happy to have you on here. You're going to see me out there at the beach volleyball courts quite a bit next season.
Well, we're glad to have you full time with the Chants now, hanging out with us and being around. It's been awesome.
Yeah, dude, really appreciate the time. Good luck the rest of the year.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
Look at that.
You know, I really wanted to do that one on the beach volleyball courts, but the weather wasn't looking great. Still an awesome conversation with Collin. Coastal is playing the Palmetto Invitational this weekend against Jacksonville and Georgia State on Friday, and Florida Gulf Coast and South Carolina on Saturday. Now, that Georgia State match is a battle for the Sun Belt regular season title and a top seed in the tournament coming up next week. We've got a lot more happening in Chanticleer sports this weekend. We'll start off with baseball. The Chants kicked off their 3-game set against Marshall with an 11-1 run rule victory on Thursday night in front of 4,000 fans at Springsbrook Stadium, the highest attended game this season. They got to see 2 absolute tanks from Dom Tazi in that victory. 2 more games coming up this weekend on Friday at 6 and Saturday at 1 from Springsbrooks. Softball grabbed a 2-0 win at Marshall on Thursday night to improve their winning streak to 5. They've got 2 games left in the weekend, 5 o'clock on Friday and noon on Saturday from Huntington, West Virginia. On the golf course, the Chanticleer women's golf team had a really strong performance at the Sun Belt Tournament in Alabama. Coastal finished 2nd overall in stroke play and advanced to the semifinals where they would fall to Southern Miss, but a good showing for the Chants to close out their season. And now the men's golf team will play in the Sun Belt Tournament early next week from Monday to Thursday in Mississippi. Men's tennis will play in the Sun Belt Tournament this weekend in Rome, Georgia, and congratulations to Christopher Norland, who was named to the All-Conference second team and the Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year. Women's tennis will wrap up their regular season on Saturday against JMU at home for Senior Day before the Sun Belt Tournament next weekend. Over on the surf turf, lacrosse matches up with Queens on Saturday at Brooks Stadium. That game will be at 1 o'clock. And track and field is participating in 2 events this weekend. Half the squad will be at the Wake Forest Invitational in North Carolina. The other half will be at the Tom Jones Invitational in Gainesville, Florida. That wraps up another stellar episode of the Chant Pod. I want to thank Collin Wilson again for coming on, and best of luck to the Chants in the 4 matches this weekend and the Sun Belt Tournament coming up next week. Let's go out, enjoy the weather, and have some fun this weekend, Teal Nation. I'm Sam Wiederhaft signing off. Chants up.